everybody, welcome back to the shop. Today's episode we're going to work on a little project for my wife, and this project we're going to make a copper rose. Now there are other YouTube creators out there that have made videos on this. I don't want anyone to think that I'm boosting their idea or their video. I saw this quite some time ago in a magazine. I've been kind of interested in it for quite some time. I've decided I'm going to make one of these for my wife. A while back, probably 9 months ago, I had to replace some plumbing in a house that I own that was built in the late 30s, early 40s. So I dug a trench and pulled most of the old copper pipe up. Some of it stayed in the yard. When I was pulling this copper pipe up, I said, you know, it's got a really cool patina. I wonder if I can make something out of that. Oddly enough, Farmcraft 101 pops up on YouTube. He makes a copper rose out of copper pipe, and he does a really good job at it. So make sure you check out his video on it. I'll put a link to his video to this down there. He comes up with an almost similar idea to mine. So what I've done is I've taken this 3/4 inch piece of 1930s, 1940s era copper pipe, which is actually probably some good copper, and I've cut them into about 3.5 inch pieces. Doesn't have to be an exact number, but we want to get about 3.5 inches out of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split these long ways. I'm going to peel them open. You may not have a bandsaw. I have a little small bandsaw here. Doesn't have to be a bandsaw. You could use a sawzall, hacksaw, angle grinder with a cutoff wheel in it, whatever you've got to cut these. What we're going to do, once we cut them, we're going to peel them open. As we work copper, it gets harder. It work hardens. So we need to anneal it. We need to soften that metal. What we're going to do is we're going to heat the copper up to glowing red, and we're going to drop it in a bucket of water and quench it. And when we quench it, that copper will be just as soft as it can be. Super easy to bend, super easy to work with. But within a very short amount of work, that copper will start to get hard again. So we have to keep annealing it as we work it, heating it, quenching it, and working it. We're going to hammer them just like a blacksmith would hammer a piece of material. What we're trying to do is draw this metal down to a thinner material. Now, you could skip this step. If you have a place to buy copper, you could buy copper sheet and do it. But in the work of hammering the copper and shaping the copper begins to get this really neat texture to it because it has a little bit different thickness. It's not all going to be the same thickness, whereas sheet copper does. So in the end, it'll net us a much nicer looking copper rose. We're going to make 5 petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's the part of the back of the rose that covers the bud and it opens, and I believe it's called a sepal. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Just for the sake of argument, and because I have a small piece of copper, this sepal is going to have 4 prongs. Usually a rose has like 5. I've already been corrected on that, but yeah, we're not going for horticulturally correct here. We're going as a piece of artwork. So we've got a total of 6 of these. So I'm going to take these over to the drill press, and I'm going to drill 6 holes in the middle of each one of these pieces. This does not have to be exactly in the middle. Doesn't matter as long as it's fairly close. I went ahead and annealed and hammered these 3 times. I have not annealed these again because we're going to cut them in a few minutes, and the way I'm going to cut them is on my bandsaw. When they're annealed and very soft, sometime the bandsaw tooth wants to bend it over, so I leave them unannealed until I cut them, and then I'll anneal them one more time to make them soft so I can work them again. If you're cutting these with a pair of tin snips, you may want to anneal them before you cut them. This is our stem of our rose. This is, I believe, a piece of number 6 solid copper ground rod from your power box, just some that I had left over. And what we're looking to do is just put a little ball on here, and then we'll cut it to length. What I'm going to do is take this back over to the wire wheel here real quick and knock that oxide layer off, because this will be the final reveal. This is how people are going to see it, so we want to make it look nice. All right, so we've cleaned up that copper a little bit there. So this is our sepal, if I'm saying it correctly. We're going to put that on first, and we want the texturing to face up. We'll start with the biggest item, and we want the texture that we put in here to be seen from the outside, so that's going to go face down. Same with this, we want to flip it over, texturing to face the bottom, and we want them to cross each other, or if they're not at exactly 90, they can be slightly off-canted. Same here, like that. A little bit of curve in there I want to work out. All right, so we've almost got kind of like a descending floor leaf clover looking thing going on here, which is perfect. Now we need to capture all of this onto the shaft, The best way I found to do it, I tried once to silver solder here and the rest of them just shifted. Really the best way to do it is to treat this like a rivet and just beat it over, peen it over. The shaft will get bigger in the center. When it does, it won't be able to go anywhere. We'll trim this off with a pair of bolt cutters so that it's shorter, and then we'll peen that over. We've peened this over so all these leaves are nice and tight in there, and we've taken a couple pairs of pliers and I've wrapped them in gaff tape. You could use duct tape, electrical tape. What we want to do is take the first petal and pull that petal up, and we pull it up in the air, pull it nice and tight, and then grab it with the pair of pliers and turn it in. All right, so what we're doing is turning these in to make that center part of the rose. Because we have these needle nose pliers wrapped in this gaff tape or this soft tape, it's preventing that serrated edge on the needle nose pliers to make it grip from tearing up the edges too bad. And we just keep twisting it. Now, once we do that, we're going to work that edge of that rose out just a little bit. Now you begin to see why the petals don't have to be perfectly shaped. All right, so we got that one done. Now we'll go to the next one. What we want to do is grab a hold and pull up and in. And the same here, up and in. We want to make that fold at the bottom nice and tight to the other petal. You can see I just got a pair of channel locks here just for this. And then the same thing again, we'll just start working this edge back. Now you just got to keep working this, and the copper will work. You're not bending it enough to make it real hard yet. All right, same thing again. Grab it with the pliers, pull up and over. And then we want to grab these and force that in like that. Same over here. You can see why it wasn't so important for those petals to be so perfect and symmetrical. Because of them being asymmetrical, it looks more natural. This is where that second pair of needle nose pliers comes in handy. There we go. That's what we're looking for. The nice thing about the copper is that we can just keep working it to get the shape that we desire. Now, same thing again. Next petal. Up. Pull this up. Relax that back down now. And a rose is starting to look a little bit like a rose. And our last petal. When they get bigger, you can start to almost shape them by hand. I say by hand, shape them with your fingers. And if you don't like the way it looks, the neat thing is you can just bend it back and start over again. So now you can see it's starting to look like a rose. Now these sepals, if I'm saying it correctly, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bend all of these down in just kind of a crazy haphazard direction. And we're going to put a little bit of texture in them, a little bit of interest with the pliers. It's going to make us have to force this copper to do things it doesn't want to do, but we can do it. The stuff really, once it's annealed, it really does work very easy. You don't have to overwork it. You don't have to work it hard at getting it where you want it. All right, so there we are. So there you go. There's your copper rose. All right, so our next order of business is going to be to make a couple of leaves. We're only going to make 2 for this particular rose. This is just some copper that I've already hammered out. Once we get them cut, we'll anneal them one more time. We'll hammer them, anneal them again, and then we'll take them over to the wire wheel and clean them up. All right, folks, here we are. We've got a couple of leaves that we made. A little piece of number 12 copper wire that I annealed, and we're just going to silver solder it right on the back. Before we use this, it's basically hydrochloric acid. It's a very weak hydrochloric acid, a cleaner, defunkifier. Just gets all the scale off so the silver solder will bite good. We're using some real thin material here, so we want a real soft flame, not a lot of heat. We're going to concentrate all of our heat, hopefully on that thick piece of copper right there. Let's cut it right about here. Let's make us another one real quick. Second verse, same as the first. Very soft. All right, so we'll put a little bit of a bend in here, like a leaf would have on it. Again, they don't have to be this exactly perfect. We're going to put them probably right in this area. There's one. Now for the trick. The trick is to get the other one on there without loosening the silver solder on the other side. There you got it, Bob's your uncle. Copper over time is going to darken, and you can spray it with lacquer to kind of keep it a coppery color, but the lacquer and the polyurethane both tend to over time yellow a little bit. One of the things that I've done on these before and gonna do on this one is I'm gonna put a little heat tent in it. And when copper gets to a certain temperature, it begins to oxidize on the surface, and then oxide makes a crystal, and depending on the temperature and the thickness of the crystal and so forth, it refracts light differently. So you get lavenders, blues, turquoise, red, straw color, and they all kind of blend together there. We don't want a lot of heat here. If we have to, we want to spend a little more time on the heat to put the heat into it. All of the heating that we did today, you can do with a propane torch or a MAP torch. It doesn't take a lot of heat to do this. This copper is very thin. There we go. I think I like that. I think I'm going to leave it like that. So we took this 1940s era copper pipe and we turned it into this beautiful rose as a gift from my wife. Hopefully it will allow me to buy a little bit more shop equipment without getting any grief. I doubt it, but it's worth a try. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me here today. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like us on Facebook. Please, somewhere down below here is a link. See you soon.